Hello and welcome back to the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast with your hosts Laz Michaelides and on the screen over there, Mr. Felipe Amarim. How you doing, bro?
Doing great, brother. And you?
Good. Yeah, very well. Thank you. Very well. I'm really looking forward to doing this episode, I have to say. And if you can't tell, guys, from the visuals behind us, we are doing an album that I chose this time, and the album is Who's Next by The Who. Now, I'll just tell you a little bit about why I chose this album first. Now, myself and Felipe, we've had numerous discussions, haven't we, about bands like the Beatles, because we both love the Beatles. Well, the gentleman we were playing and touring with, he loved the Rolling Stones, so we often talked about the Rolling Stones. But one band that are always lumped in with the Beatles and the Stones are the Who. And I thought it was about time we looked at the Who. So a bit of info about the album. This is their fifth album. It's called Who's Next. It was released on the 2nd of August, 1971, recorded between April and June of 1971. The genre is considered to be hard rock, which I think is pretty fair. Clocks in at 43 and a half minutes. The label was Track and Decca. The producer was Glyn Johns and The Who, and the singles from the album were Won't Get Fooled Again, Baba O'Reilly, and Behind Blue Eyes. Now, I want to start off by telling you guys, including yourself, Felipe, that I've had this little, this little stick about The Who for a long, long time. Right, the first thing to say is that I've never really given them enough of a chance. The songs I've heard are the singles and the hits, and I've heard them, I've been like, yeah, they're fine. But I've never understood why they were put in with the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, if you like, as being one of those pioneering, important bands of the 60s. Spoiler alert, my opinion has changed since doing this album, but I just wanted to open with that to tell you where I was on The Who. Now, we haven't discussed The Who much, Felipe. What's your opinion on them?
I love them. I mean,
You really?
Yeah, I do.
Spoken about them. I know.
No, it's funny. The Who, they kind of came later in my life, which is funny because by the time someone mentioned The Who to me, believe me or not, I had been through the whole Black Sabbath discography, the whole Zeppelin and Pink Floyd discographies. I'm talking literally. I've listened to all of that from those guys and the Beatles and all the Stones classic albums. And then someone mentioned The Who, and I was like, yeah, I think I've heard of them. And I don't know why it took that long. And then I was already like playing gigs professionally, and a friend of mine bought, I think 1 or 2 DVDs we had, and those are all like after 2000. No, so that's The Who with Zach Starkey on drums, who is Ringo Starr's son, who's one of the, for me, one of the greatest rock drummers out there. And but that's a different incarnation of the band. That's you only have half of the original lineup there. So you have Pete Townshend and Roger Daltrey.
Who's on bass for them? Do you know?
Well, the first DVD I've got and I watched was still John Entwistle, and then he died a few years after that. So the other DVD I had was probably 2010 or something like that, and it was with Pino Palladino on bass.
Oh, of course, one of my favorite bass players.
Yeah,
how did I forget you?
So the recent lineups they played with, like those guys are all like session musicians, freelance musicians, hired guns as we normally call them.
Yeah,
but they're phenomenal, and they always worked with great musicians. So the Who, for the last 3 decades, they have been about more than that. They've been basically Pete Townshend and Roger Daltrey plus assorted great session musicians, depending on the tour. Although they managed to keep Zach Starkey for most of that time now, but still they are really energetic live, and I think every time they play up to this day, they are a phenomenal live band. So I got to know them by watching videos of them older playing the classics, and I fell in love with those songs by the live version of it, the interpretation of it, and then I started listening to the albums. And it's funny because when we decide on which albums we're going to do for the podcast, and this probably has been decided long ago, so I didn't remember who chose the album. But this album is one of my favorites. I think it's amazing.
That's good. I decided to do it because of my own little issue. Yeah, I say it's an issue. You know what I mean? Like, as in, like, yeah, I've said it already. I feel like I needed to give them a go because I always kind of like, the Who, you know, really are they that good? Um, as I said 5 minutes ago, spoiler alert, this album has changed my opinion on them. I don't even really know where to start. I think what I will start with is how hard this album rocks. Excuse the cheesiness and the pun in the line, but this is a genre-defining hard rock album, isn't it? And I think
Yeah,
the majority of that comes from the performances.
yeah,
And it's hard to believe that the Who would still be a good live band in this day and age without John Entwistle and Keith Moon, because they made up so much of that hard rock, intense live energy part of the band, didn't they? They literally made up
yeah.
half of it. They were the rhythm section. So to hear that Zach Starkey and Pino Palladino are doing a good job is really nice to hear. But yeah, I mean, where do you want to start with the album? Do you have anything you want to
Oh
kick
man.
off with?
Oh yeah, I actually want to start by kind of with like reflecting on where they were when they in their careers when they recorded
Brilliant.
this.
Let's do
This is
that. Yeah.
this
So a
is the
little bit of
fifth.
background.
It's the fifth album. So
Yes.
again, very often we have these bands like we discussed a few bands that sometimes make their best work not right at the beginning, as some people tend to think. You know, the first three albums are the best. Well, not really always the case. But here's the point: they released Live at Leeds, which is one of the most incredible live albums.
Very famous, isn't it?
Yeah, of in rock history. Again, it's a phenomenal album, and they had. So they proved they're a great live band. That's a point in their career where everyone respects them as a phenomenal live act, and they've done the opera rock stuff or concept albums, whatever you want to call them. They did Tommy, right?
Yeah.
What else did it? Was it Quadrophenia just
I feel like that
before
came
that one?
after. I haven't looked,
Oh,
but you
after,
could
no,
be right.
sorry, yeah,
But
yeah.
just on
They
Tommy for a
definitely did
second.
Tommy, but yeah, they did Tommy before that, right?
Well,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
on Tommy, I
yeah,
was listening to an interview today where Pete Townsend was saying that they knew that they were kind of going more in the direction of the harder side of
yeah,
pop and rock in the 60s. So whilst the Beatles, the Stones, and the Who were kind of pushing this pop thing, he wanted to keep those fans, but at the same time, he knew that the hippie movement was going on in America. So he wanted to get them both in, which is why he wrote Tommy as
yeah.
like a mystical concept album that had an element of psychedelia to it, but also sort of satisfied the pop audiences. So he did that, didn't he? Do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So in Tommy, you have all those songs connected, somehow telling one story start to finish, isn't it? So
Yeah.
it's like you have different songs, but you have a storyline that connects them all. And Tommy being the central character of the story. So they wanted to do it again, right? So that's the point. You know that they were Pete Townsend was working in a different in another opera rock album, or if you want to call it a concept album, which was meant to be called Lifehouse. That's it. I
That's right. Yeah.
took note of that. Yeah. So he had a few songs apparently. I don't know how many of these songs were initially written for that, but definitely Baba O'Reilly. So that was a song that he was writing for that project, and apparently they didn't get the sponsorship they wanted, and maybe the label wouldn't fund
Can
another
I
opera rock
can I
album.
expand
Yeah,
on that because
yeah,
I've done a lot of
please.
research on that.
Yeah,
So he did. He had the Lifehouse, which was going to be not a sequel to Tommy, but
yeah,
another rock opera. And what happened is there was a few things initially, and I think on the mainstream websites, what you read is that there was a schedule clash with the manager or with the managers. Um, just to answer your question,
yeah.
a lot of the songs from Lifehouse were on Who's Next, and whatever didn't go on to Who's Next are scattered through the other albums,
Okay,
you know.
so he
But
probably used them all.
yeah. But I was just watching the classic albums episode of Who's Next, and it's fascinating because Pete Townsend was saying that he was very much going in the same vibe as he was going for Tommy, creating this rock opera with all the songs interlinked and with a general theme of becoming your own person. Don't
Yeah.
you know? There was what they call the mod movement going on in Britain at that time during the 50s. That kind of expanded, and it was about the mod stands for modernist, and it was about just taking a hold of yourself as a person. Be yourself. Don't do what the establishment wants. Don't do what your parents want to do. You grab a hold of your life and do it. And we're going to see some of these themes come up in some of the lyrics of these songs. But as for the writing of it, Pete got stuck, and the whole band and the management were behind him trying to do this
Oh, wow.
Lifehouse opera. They were really up for it. But I'm just, yeah, the rest of the band didn't really get it. They didn't get the idea he was going for, but they were there for it. They said, Pete will support you, we'll do it. It just didn't, it was much bigger than just an album. I don't know if you know this. He wanted to make a movie, and he
Oh,
wanted
wow.
to make a
Yeah.
movie that was interspersed with a concert and mix things together and have sections of a concert going in with the movie and this, that, it was a big thing, but it didn't get there. It didn't get there. It fell off. And maybe things like those schedule clashes with the manager sort of came into play, and they all just kind of said, do you know what, this isn't really going to work. But as you said, we were left with songs that they then took to a studio and turned into Who's Next.
Which is, for me, I'm glad that that's what ended up happening, because instead of having another concept album, which they already proved they're good at,
Yeah.
they came up with a great collection of rock songs.
Yeah.
And I would say just that they are rock songs to me. They're not that heavy, but they're not just like the sing-along stuff they did, like the early stuff, like My Generation, Can't Explain. Those songs, they could even be featured in the Beatles album. Short, straight to the point. Loads of choruses you can just sing along. And this time I think they found that point, that sweet spot between going really creative and still being able to deliver like popular songs.
Yeah. Let's get into the album, but just before we do, I want to tell two quotes, okay, from Chris Stamp, the manager, and Pete Townsend. And it just dawned on me that I have listened to this album, and I've got it, I've understood it, I get why it's so good. The world gets why it's so good. Everyone gets why it's so good. But listen to these quotes from them. From Chris Stamp, the manager. It wasn't as fantastic as it was meant to be. And Pete Townsend said, Who's Next felt like the one that got away.
Oh,
He
wow.
really wanted Lifehouse to work. From the interviews I watched, he put so much of his soul and his heart and his energy and his talent into Lifehouse that I can tell from the interview, I think he still feels a little bitter that Lifehouse didn't work off. Not bitter towards anyone, just sad that it didn't materialize. But I thought, my God, how many people write what some people call one of the greatest rock albums ever and say, yeah, felt like it got away. Just a thought, just something to think about. But yeah, let's go straight in with Bubba O'Reilly, one of the most famous rock songs ever, right? Not just of the 70s. And I think that the most important thing is how recognizable the intro is, isn't it? And this is a key factor of the album, is this introduction of synthesizers into rock music. Now, what's important about the two main synthesizing parts on this album, which is Bubba O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again, is that the synthesizers are not there just to play an effect or to play along with the chorus. They're setting the rhythm, aren't they? They're setting the tempo.
It's like a sample, right?
Exactly.
It's a sample.
And we
it's
hear
what
Pink
we do
Floyd
a lot
use
in
it.
modern music.
And Pink Floyd use it a couple of years later in one of the songs on Dark Side of the Moon. But yeah, what an intro. Talk to us about that.
Well, I love the intro because, like, you have they really bring in the synth sound into the band, that's the risky part of it. You're a four-piece band. None of you is a keyboard player, right? So, and then they say, the main instrument in this song is going to be a synth, and you're going to have that loop that goes on and on and on and on. And I find it beautiful because you have the synth and then the piano, and then you have the groove. It's like the guitar. It takes ages and ages for the guitar to just joined the band. And
Yeah.
if you see some of the live performances of that song at the time, they had some headphones because they want. I think I don't know if they would if it was a playback of that synth, or they didn't have a keyboard play on stage,
Okay.
and that just I don't know, but you can see them with headphones, probably with an early version of a live click track. I don't know what they were doing, but it's the only song that you'll see them playing live with headphones, so they can listen to the loop, probably, so playing over the loop. And it's an iconic like intro, one of probably it might be one of the most famous intros in rock music, and it's not played on guitar.
Yeah, there you go. I think, as I always say, less is more, and I love it here because if you listen to the verses of Baba O'Reilly, they're so simple. It's just some power chords, isn't it? Dun, da, da.
But then he could do the whole,
with his, that's it, with the whole the flying arm and everything. It's just a really, really good song, and I don't think that does it justice enough. It's a good song, right? It's fantastic, and what a way to kick off an album.
Yeah. There's a video of them playing at the Super Bowl. So they're one of the.
What year was that?
Sorry, I love it. 2012, something like that. I don't know. Check it out. I'm glad we got Google to help us with those things.
Nice,
we don't need to memorize dates anymore. So the Who live at Super Bowl, they basically played a medley of all their hit songs. So they've played. They played without stopping, just one song into another, and just parts of the songs. So because it has to be like a 15-minute performance, isn't it?
2010.
So,
2010.
Cool.
Yeah,
almost got it. I recommend everyone to listen to that, to watch that performance. So the thing is, you have the whole stadium singing along when they go into that part, Teenage Wasteland. So you can hear everyone singing along, and that's how powerful that song is. And again, the lyrics are very simple in a good way.
Yeah,
delivers the message straight away. And
teenage rebellion, isolation, the search of meaning in a life.
What you said at the beginning, it makes a lot of sense to me now. Like looking for your own self. You're not trying to be someone else, isn't it? The whole
This is what I wanted.
It feels to me like the album starts and finishes with that message.
Definitely, yeah. But this is what I wanted to convey with the Lifehouse thing, is that he was working on a rock opera that was, do you know, I'm going to remember it. He wanted to create a character that was deaf, dumb, and blind, but also in the future. No. He wanted to do it again.
All right.
He wanted to do it again, but he didn't know how to do it. So what he did for Lifehouse was that he was going to send the character to the future, and put him in a suit and give him a corporate job, because he thought that is the meaning of being deaf, dumb, and blind, doing everything your company tells you, living by the standards your parents set, stuff like that. So my whole point, so my point is, I just wanted to convey that the Lifehouse message has strongly gone into these albums, which is why it's important to get a bit of that context from before, because we're still seeing the lyrical themes here, aren't we? Teenage Wasteland, capturing like the disillusionment of youth culture and painting pictures of individual struggles and trying to find meaning in life, connection, but what a way to kick off. And what do you think of the violin solo at the end? Again, another completely rock and roll thing, isn't it?
But they get into like this snare drum groove, which feels almost like country music.
Well, it's a bit polka. A bit polka.
Just exactly. They go into that vibe. It's very traditional, isn't it? So again, I think they were playing whatever they wanted to play. So just put a violin solo at the end. The title of the song is based on two names, isn't it? It's one Indian guru who was an inspiration for Townsend, also a classical composer. So you probably got their names there, right?
Well, the Indian guru is called Baba something, and the composer's surname was Riley.
Baba? I don't know.
And the surname of the classical guy was Riley. So
Terry Riley.
Baba O'Reilly. So obviously,
so you have a classical composer and an Indian guru. So basically, again, see how interesting it is. Like, find your own self. He is talking about religious philosophy kind of stuff and classical music. They're not like related. So what he is like he has his personal uh, um, journey and his musical journey, and the combination of that is
Mm,
Baba O'Reilly. That's how I
yeah.
feel about it.
Do you know what? I think it's probably actually a good idea to go straight to the last song, Won't Get Fooled Again, because I feel they're very similar in tone and vibe and attitude.
Man, I thought of this on my way home
Yeah.
today, because I was listening to them for the third time in a week, and I was like, I've finished the album, started again, so I've listened to I listened to the whole album plus Baba O'Reilly again. And I was like,
It
oh, wait
works,
a
doesn't it?
minute.
It
It
clicks.
makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense, because again, so they repeated the formula with Won't Get Fooled Again.
Yeah. The synth at the
That
start, the power chords.
if you mention the Who, you got to talk about this song. I think it's one of their anthems, isn't it? It's a
Yeah.
proper like classic song, and it does have the same formula. So you have a synth and a piano together, and then have that all the, and you get into the heavy drumming, and you have parts when you stop and change the singer, etc., etc. So they use the same formula, but it's a very, very different song.
Yeah. Very much
Um,
longer as well. And
much
it
longer, and
stays in the
I think
same
it
groove.
goes, yeah, but it goes deeper into the message. So
Hmm.
whilst in the first song is more like, I'm here just fighting for my own survival, I'm gonna do my own thing, live my own life. The second one's got more sarcasm. So the last song of the album, Won't Get Fooled Again, it's got more sarcasm in when it comes to the political side of finding yourself, isn't it? Because it's
Yeah.
basically telling everyone, if you probably have a lot to say about this song. I'll just say what I got from it. It's like, you're going to support a revolution today, because you believe that the people with the microphone are the ones who are gonna call everyone for action and change the country or change whatever. And those people are going to become the new leaders, and they're going to do the same things as the old leaders. So that's why in
Yeah.
the end, the very last line of the song is meet the new boss, the same as the old boss. And
Yeah.
yeah, but and
He
yeah, I'm sorry. The personal side of that is, which my favorite line is, and I'll pick my guitar and play just like yesterday, because it's like, yeah, we've been through the revolution. Is it same old shit over and over again?
Yeah.
We're not going to get anywhere. But I'll just do what I know. I'm just going to do my
Pick
thing.
up
I'll
my
go and play
guitar.
my
Yeah.
guitar. Yeah,
Yeah, no, everything you said is completely, I completely agree with it. The only thing I wanted to say is that Pete Townsend actually had this to say about the song. I'm paraphrasing here, all right? So this
yeah,
isn't the exact quote, but because I was trying to type as I was watching, excuse me. He said, Won't get fooled again. He said, it's not a defying statement, but a plea. Please don't make me the new boss. Even though I might be your hero on stage, don't make me the new boss, as I'm no different to the guy who was on stage before me. Be yourselves, find your own
yeah.
journey, make your own path. Those last three sentences I added in, but yeah,
So
it was,
yeah, well, it's such an old kind of a message that people probably never paid enough attention to. So,
it's
but
hard.
yeah,
I was going to say it's hard when you're in a position of authority like Pete Townsend is in the band. You know, he was primary songwriter, wasn't he?
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes I don't. I sometimes think it's hard to when they're singing lyrics about, don't idolize politicians, don't trust your government. It almost feels a little hypocritical, because you're saying, okay, don't trust these people, but trust me. But
yeah,
in these lyrics, Pete Townsend is explicitly saying, don't even trust me. just be
yeah,
yourself.
yeah.
Like, do everything for yourself,
But
which
when
is
you
even
listen,
what he
yeah,
was doing in the previous years with My Generation.
yeah,
People tried to put us down talking about My Generation. It's always the Who's message, and I've only got this from this album and an interview, or the TV show seems to be. It's not like rebel, fight your elders, don't show them respect. It's just about be individuals, be yourselves.
yeah, exactly. And I think it's a powerful message. And if you're actually capable of thinking like that, then if you want to follow a leader, but if as long as you can question the leader,
Yeah,
maybe that would make sense.
good
But
point.
what he's doing there is like, it literally says in the song, like, you know, the left and the right are the same in under point of view. So the conflicting parts, the parts that are struggling for power, you know, in the end of the day, or you're going to choose a leader and just obey, and then you think that leader is different from the previous one. Well, guess what? They're not. So I
Yeah.
think that's rock and roll. You know, they are telling someone that, like, you know what, you can be free, you can think for yourself, you can fight for your own survival, your own ideals, your own, you know, life, you know.
Yeah.
It's cool. I love it, and I
It is
think,
very cool. Yeah.
and they do it in a powerful way with a, you know, with loud guitar, drums, and bass, and
It's all the
and
same as,
shouting when necessary.
yeah, it's all the same as the first song, isn't it? The awesome, you know, significant use of power chords, the awesome drum fills. I mean, I know he came first, but because I'm more of a Zeppelin fan, I can't help but feel that Bonham took some inspiration from Keith Moon, right? In the sense of just absolutely going to town on the toms, doing
Well, they knew
fills.
each other, you know.
Oh, did they
They knew each
really?
other. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
wow. I didn't know that.
Well,
But
there's
yeah,
a story. I don't know. I don't know if this is actually uh, uh, um, the truth, because there's so many versions of this. But some people say that Keith Moon came up with the name Led Zeppelin. So that's one of.
I
But
don't think that is true, but I've heard
yeah, I
that
don't think
story.
it's
You're
true.
right.
It's
Yeah.
a myth. But the fact behind this
He
myth
knew them.
is that they actually used to hang out together. So Keith
That's
Moon and
really
John
cool. Yeah.
Bonham knew each other,
I
and
mean, can I
yeah.
ask you something as a drummer? To me, it seems like their not techniques, their style is very similar. It just feels like hell for leather, pound it as hard as you can. Obviously, good timekeeping and everything. But would you say that they're quite similar as a drummer, or do you
Oh,
notice
that's
discernible differences?
Oh man, I could talk about the difference for an hour, but there's the
Keep it
similarities, I
to
would
two
say.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, similarities between Bonham and Keith Moon, I would say, is like they can be really aggressive when necessary,
Yeah.
and they can keep the beat when they need to. But the thing with Keith Moon, I think that his playing is busier in a certain way. So it's
Okay.
like every other bar there's a drum fill, whilst Bonham would stick to the groove uh, for much longer. He would play less fills than Keith
Okay.
Moon.
That's
So
important.
and
Yeah,
maybe
that's a big
maybe
difference.
maybe Bonham was a bit more funky, and Moon is
Groovy.
more groove. No, I
No,
wouldn't
I was going
say
to
that.
say, sorry, Bonham a bit more groovy and
More
funky,
groovy,
and
yes, and
Keith Moon a bit
Moon,
more straight.
but yes, and more towards the rock side of drumming, believe
Yeah.
it or not. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's more like it's pure rock and roll. It's loud, loads of fills, and the freedom that he had behind the drum kit. It's Some people would say, you know, he was just like doing whatever. You know, he would play it in a completely random way, but to keep the groove together or the rhythm together. At the same time being that creative and completely mad behind the drum kit,
Yeah.
it's not an easy task, and I think not many drummers could do that to the level he did. So that's
Yeah.
why he changed the history of drums. That's why you have drummers from different styles recognizing uh, um, how good he was, you know. So it's not like if you appreciate drumming, you got to listen to Keith Moon at some
Yeah.
point, and you know, give it a go. You know,
Fair
I
enough.
think one more thing about him in this album, I think he dedicated more time to groove rather than just showing off his fills. I think there's more groove, in my opinion, in this album.
I
As
feel like
crazy as he sounds.
I feel like that's the same for every member in this album, to be honest.
Yeah.
But we can get there. Yeah. Do you want to say anything? Where do you want to go next?
Who's next?
Yeah, good one. Brilliant. Yeah, very good.
I'll say who's
Yeah,
next.
well done. You made another
Yeah.
pun. Good
Well,
job. Yeah.
we're talking about one, but we talk about two members of the band, right? We talk about Pete Townsend as the main songwriter and Keith Moon as the
Should we talk about the
explosive.
others?
Yeah,
Yep.
let's talk about what do you think about John Entwistle?
There
Come
we go.
on.
That's where I wanted to go. John Entwistle. I mean, in many ways, you could say he was a pioneer in rock bass playing, because you have to think when the Who began. And by the way, guys, any songs we mention are going to be in the show notes and the playlist below. When the Who began, which I think was mid-60s, you know, my generation came out in 1965. I'm trying to think what the norm was at that time, and the norm for bass players was to sit on the root note. I know Paul McCartney was doing some cool things with the Beatles, experimenting a little bit, but the typical bass players thing was to sit on the root note. Maybe you go root and fifth, doom, 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 doom. You know, very boring.
Yeah.
It was just to marry up that the relationship between the rhythms in the drums and the harmony in the guitar. But what people like John Entwistle did is they aligned the bass more towards the guitar. Would you
Yeah.
agree? They kind of turned it into an instrument as important as the guitar, because often you think about heavy metal music, you think about rock music, you have the guitar and the bass doing the same thing, from Zeppelin all the way through to, like, I don't know, bloody a metal band, you know, Trivium, whatever. You have them doing the same, they're playing the same kind of thing. Whereas before, a guitar would do the riff and the bass would just sit on the, maybe even on a different rhythm, playing the root note.
Yeah, I have a feeling that with the Who, there's a lot of parts of that song where Townsend just gives room for Entwistle to just do his thing. Because like you hear less guitar, or the guitar is doing more rhythm than riffs. You know, so the bass can show off in a certain way. Or
the best, yeah.
Yeah, it's like you have rhythm guitar and lead bass. That's
how
I feel.
The best example though is the song "My Generation," because it's got the bass solo in, and that to me properly signified. Not only that, the tone. And I was actually in the interview as well. I was listening, and Pete Townsend was saying that they actually took inspiration from John Paul Jones from Led Zeppelin. Wow. Because when John Paul Jones was playing session bass before he joined Led Zeppelin, he used, I mean, John Paul Jones was mainly a finger player, but he did for some sessions use a pick. And he got this tone out of his bass that actually inspired John Entwistle to create his own kind of tone similar to that, which I thought was kind of interesting. But yeah, when you think John Entwistle, you think that massive, powerful, thumping, ferocious bass.
Yeah.
And he played it often with his fingers. And you watch him do the My Generation bass solo, it's like do 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 do. And I just remember hearing that for the first time and thinking of that bass tone and being like, shit, like that is furious. You know, that is
furious. That's a word that really describes him. And he is a rare case of a bassist that would play a different line on at like every bar and still grooving. Like I think this is really not the case. He really normally doesn't work, which is the more notes he plays, the better his sound. It's just it's insane how he managed to do that. It's like the perfect choices on every bar.
Well, I just wanted to talk about the song "Getting in Tune" because for me, I've got written here Entwistle's best moment, and I'm thinking, you know, I always say less is more, and you don't want to overplay, but there's a moment where, you know, it's a very slow ballady song. I'm getting in tune, and then there's one part where Entwistle, he goes, "I'm getting in tune," doodle-doo, 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 doodle-doo.
Kind of finding the key, right?
Yeah, but it feels like normally if I heard that, I'd kind of be like, oh, you're overplaying a little bit. You know, there's no need for that many notes in a song this slow. But with Entwistle, he just works it in, man. He just works it in and he makes it fit seamlessly because he doesn't overdo it. He'll do little flashy bits like that, and it will work because it will just take you by surprise, and it'll only be once. You won't do it again. And it's just like little moments of brilliance that take you by surprise.
Yeah, another moment he does that. It does, you know, some cool grooves is Behind Blue Eyes, because what happens with that song is the drums only come at the end. And so you have this really, really strong vocals at the beginning with acoustic guitar. It's guitar and vocals. You go into the chorus and you think, well, that's, as an arranger, you know, most producers would think, well, you know what, let's just add drums from the chorus. But no, what comes into the chorus is the bass, giving more life to the song. Just the bass was enough.
Fattening it up a bit.
Yeah,
lovely.
Great stuff.
So we've done Entwistle, and we've got to talk about Daltrey, man.
Oh, what a singer! I had the pleasure to watch him live at the Palladium in.
Oh, really?
In
Brilliant! What was that? Man. Like his own band?
It was his own band. Was it? That was.
Has he done a kind of Robert Plant thing where he's made his own music?
Do you know our friend, the harmonica player Tom Brundage?
Of course, I do.
Yeah, you know, he played with us a few times with Jack Hutchinson, and Tom gave me a ticket for that gig, so I went to see him. So obviously he did his solo stuff, did loads of the Who stuff. But I was really, really impressed by the quality of his vocals, up to this day.
You can
So I
tell he
think,
looks after himself, doesn't he?
yeah, he's healthy. He looks after himself, and he sings in like he. And the thing is, so you can see that he's a technical singer. He knows
Mm,
exactly what he's doing. He's breathing correctly, and he looks after his health and all that stuff. But there's so much passion, and if you consider that with the Who, he was singing mainly lyrics written by someone else. So
yeah,
to interpret someone else's lyrics, putting your heart into it and make it sound maybe better than it would sound
yeah,
in
it's
in
not
the in
easy.
in the voice of the songwriter, because
Yeah,
Townsend himself is a good singer, really good singer, and I love his all the parts he sings, and it's so his voice is so clean, and I think yeah, he's got a beautiful voice, but
and he's
but,
got
but
yeah,
Daltrey is just like a punch in your face when he sings, isn't it?
but at the same time, Daltrey can sing beautifully and softly, can't he? Just like in Behind Blue Eyes and Getting in Tune. I think those two songs, as good as his as good as his scream is, it won't get at the end of Won't Get Fooled Again.
Oh man, that's
It is
great.
it is iconic and it's rock and roll, but for me, the scream is made better because you hear how he can sing softly. I always
Yeah.
like that. I like if all you can do is scream, it's like cool, that's good, but show me what else you can do. And Daltrey on this album, my God, his vocal range, just from soft, sweet, really passionate, all the way up to the scream, is just fantastic.
Well, what I can get from him is he really enjoys being a singer. He enjoys
Hmm.
being on stage and performing.
Just look at
And he
that photo
says,
behind you with the
"Oh
with
yeah,
the string and the mic
yeah."
cable. Like
Whoever's
that's
watching this instead of just listening, there's him like having a lot of fun on stage.
yeah.
Yeah,
Brilliant stuff. And any particular songs you want to talk over? I feel like we've
man,
actually touched a little bit on each one, but is there any
we
defining
did, we
factors
did.
in all of them?
I actually I have a question for you. I have my own
Ooh,
answers to this, but I have a question.
okay.
Which song was a surprise for you?
Oh, that's a really great question, and I actually have
Uh,
an answer.
well,
For me, the song is over is my answer to
so
that, and I'll tell you. Can I talk about it for a bit? Because I
yeah,
just
yeah,
want
yeah,
to.
yeah. Please.
First of all, it's 6 minutes long, just over, and I'm never bored during it. I think what a bloody good song.
Yeah,
Now, Townsend's vocals, he's the lead vocalist for most of the song. Now, what screams out to me, especially in this kind of music, which is meant to be, let's call it accessible hard rock, yeah?
yeah,
Key changes. 1 minute 45, there's a key change. 2 minutes 35, there's another key change. And this really, really, really reminded me of a Beach Boys song called That's Not Me,
mm,
where Brian, what's his name? Brian Wilson. It is, isn't it? Brian, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's I remember when we did that episode, I got him confused with the Rolling Stones guy. Yeah. Um,
Brian Jones.
that's it. Yeah. Brian Wilson had this. Brian Wilson was a composer, and he wrote music almost as if it was classical music. And we know through, I know through many classical composers that you always change key in classical music because you're
Yeah,
changing the section. Whereas in
yeah,
pop music, you go to a verse. In classical music, you might change key to take you to a new
yeah,
section. I'm generalizing here, but that's the idea. I never gave Townsend the credit that I think he deserves now. I always thought he was just a rock guitarist who put some songs together. But listening to The Song Is Over, I can
yeah,
hear he really thought about the song and which direction to take it in. Okay, why change the key here? And why do it again at 2:35? It tells me that there's more than a rock guitarist behind these songs. There is a
yeah,
writer, there is a
yeah,
composer, there is a musician. And it really took me by surprise. And it's a sad song as well. The lyrics exploring the themes of loss, acceptance, passing time,
yeah.
realization that, all good things must come to an end. It's just really surprised me, and I'm
It's
I'm
funny because
really yeah, I really enjoyed that one.
that was the one that surprised me, because I knew the album and didn't I honestly didn't remember that song.
Yeah,
It's like squeezed in there in the middle of the album with loads of classic tunes, and then when you listen to it, it's like, wow, it's beautiful, isn't it? All
it,
of it.
it just
And
it, it just took it to another level for me. Like I said, the first four songs Do you know, apart from Bubba O'Reilly, songs 2, 3, and 4, they're fine, but I love the back half of the album.
Yeah,
Um,
I love what when they do when they change from one singer to another and they just change the
yeah,
whole arrangement
yeah,
behind it as well. They do that a lot. The contrast between their voices is one of the biggest things. That was my surprise as well. That was the
yeah.
yeah. Do you have a personal favorite song?
Hmm.
Mm.
Um, I need to give a an honorable mention to Baba O'Reilly because it's one of those songs. Like I said, don't need to repeat myself. I never got the Who, so when I heard Baba O'Reilly before, I was like, I don't get this. Like, it's not really doing it for me. Now I can listen back and say, "Fucking hell, that's a good song." So that deserves an honorable mention. But the song "Getting in Tune" I thought was really nice, very theatric and extravagant. It almost had like, I kind of think Queen probably listened to that song and went,
Yeah,
and Freddie Mercury went, God, I could thrive doing this kind of music, really,
yeah.
really vibrant, and like I said, what have I got here? Ent
Feels like
Whistle's,
a second part of the song is
it
over, isn't
is,
it?
yeah, feels like Ent Whistle's best moment to me. The song's journey is great too, taking us from like that soft start to an exciting high tempo rock and roll end. So yeah, well, what about yours, personal favorite?
My favorite's Mobile.
Yeah, that was
It's
great. That one.
so like because it's not pretentious and it's just like so enjoyable.
It's
You can
very
you can
kind of,
picture this guy in a car. It's like driving,
yeah. It,
probably
it
over the
gave me
speed
very
limit.
very country music vibes. I got.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean? A bit kind of Rolling Stonesy, the way they
yeah.
throw in a little bit of
For a
blues, a
bit
little
of
bit of
folk,
country.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
There's loads of acoustic guitar, which they were really good at that.
Yeah,
And you have Keith Moon going nuts at the end of it. So it's like he's waiting for the end of the song to give it all.
yeah,
And I love it. I think it's a great song, and it's a good laugh. Same thing as My Wife is another song you listen. It's just a good laugh.
yeah. That's
That's
an
what
End
it
Whistle
is.
song. That one.
Yeah,
That
it's the
John
only
End
one he
Whistle wrote that
sings.
one.
Such a shame that the vocals a bit buried in the mix. You can, it's for some reason it's not
Yeah.
as loud, but he does a great vocal performance, and the lyrics are really funny.
It is, yeah, they are really funny. But I tell you what I like on that song is the saxophones or the
Yeah,
trumpets.
yeah,
Really kind of gives it that kind of Motown feel.
it
And as I
does.
say always, I just love when you take little bits of other styles and plonk it into. I mean, we said it with Muse a couple of weeks ago. It's just taking little elements of something, but still keeping your own signature sound. And I think I don't know if this album defines the Who's sound. You can answer that in a second, but if it does, I think wow, they really deserve the credit they got because there's I'm not going to go down the route again where I always use the Animals as an example because that's a great episode we did where
Yeah,
you see a band obviously saying this is how the Animals do R&B, this is
yeah,
how the Animals do rock and roll, this is how the Animals do blues, whereas other bands take little elements and mold it and say, okay, well, we're going to do our version of rock but with little bits here and little bits of that. This, I couldn't even tell you a song. I couldn't even pick a song from these nine that I'd say that is the Who's defining sound. Maybe Bubba O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again.
well,
That's the
maybe,
obvious
yeah,
answer,
because
but
they, yeah.
there's just too much going on in between those two
But
songs.
like Behind
Like,
Blue Eyes, such a classic as well.
yeah, but that's
It's
not hard rock, is it? And it's
not at
like,
all.
but
It's a
yet
ballad.
people
It's a
would
ballad.
associate that as being
Well,
one of their most
also,
famous songs.
it's only a ballad until the drums come in. So
Yeah,
because then it's something else. So
yeah.
it's yeah. I think for me, this album defines what kind of band they were. I'll tell you another
Can I
story
ask?
about yeah,
Can I ask you? I just want to ask you
yeah.
if you had to pick one song from this album that defined the Who for you, what song
Mm.
would it be? Because I'm just telling you, I
Ooh,
can't decide because I don't know the Who well
that's
enough.
tough. Oh man, that's difficult. I mean, it might be a cliche to say "Won't Get Fooled Again," but
That
let me
not
go through
cliche.
the track
That's
list
fine.
again. Ah man, difficult. I don't think I can choose one. Oh, do you know what? Bargain. That's it.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't think you'd say that, but
yeah. I just like it. It's there's a lot of their sound in that song. It's a
dynamic
simple
guitar
song.
riffs, driving
There's like
drums.
it's a love song, but not a predictable kind of choice of words on how to describe how you love someone.
There
And
you
it's
go. I don't know
beautifully
if anyone
written. Yeah,
thought that would be the Felipe's
that's
answer,
the
but there
song.
you go.
And they play this song live with such energy. It's
It's a good
so
song.
great to see. Yeah.
You had a story, you said.
No, quick story about this gig I've been to. So Roger Daughtry is answering questions that he received by email or whatever. Like, so he's got some cards with the questions in his hands. Like, people ask him some questions all the time. So I'm gonna, give you my answers. And one of the questions, what's your favorite The Who album? And he said, oh, can't really choose one. I love all of them. Who's next? He changed the card. So that was
Brilliant.
yeah. That for me was like, okay, so we have a favorite album. He's got a favorite album, and it's my favorite album. And out of all the whole discography, it does define who they are.
Just to talk about a bit of significance culturally and musically about this album. The first thing that we mentioned already was the innovation in the use of the synthesizer and the electronic effects. When you consider 1971, people were using synths. The Beatles used synths towards the end as well. But as I said, providing a rhythm and a stability and a tempo to the song rather than just an effect over. Previous albums from The Who I've heard are quite thin and raw in production. Yet, my God, man, Who's Next sound like it could have been produced like not even 80s, 90s. Sounds really good. Really good production, isn't it?
Yeah,
every instrument is perfect.
You don't even need to listen to a remastered version
No.
of it. Just listen to the original mix and master. It's great.
The only thing, as you mentioned, was Entwistle's vocals are a bit low in the mix on My Wife, but other than that, couldn't tell you anything else that I had to complain about. The mix wise, it's fantastic. Someone commented on it and said and called it intelligent rock and roll that keeps the spirit and attitude, but has a very mature sound and depth to it, which I thought was quite interesting. Intelligent rock and roll. It's like an oxymoron, isn't it? You wouldn't, you wouldn't kind of put them together.
Exactly. But it gets to a point when, for me, it's like, yeah, we're getting too clever. Let's just like throw a song like My Wife or Mobile in the bit of it. So it's not, don't take yourself too seriously.
The other thing I want to talk, I mean, we already touched on Tommy, but again, another critic observed that Tommy was way more art rock, focusing on the concept of the lyrics, the link and the structure of all the music together. Whereas Who's Next is very much more in the rock and roll category, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like just going for typical traditional rock and roll. Even if you've got songs that are a bit longer and different in structure, like Baba O'Reilly, they still undoubtedly have that rock and roll feel to them, don't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's rock through and through. Like, and
raised the standards of hard rock, certainly.
Yeah, definitely did.
Do you want to talk about anything else? Do you have anything else to talk about?
Man, I want to talk about this album for weeks, but we got to at some point end this episode. So.
We can end soon, but I mean, is there any other? It feels like it's been a bit short, this one, but again, I feel like we've said all we had to say. It's just go listen to it more than anything.
Just say the album cover is great. That's the other thing I want to say.
Yeah, now they saw that. I read about that.
They were on the way to a gig in Leicester, I guess.
And they saw that piece of clay in the sand, and it reminded them of the monolith.
The monolith in 2001.
2001, yeah. So they thought, screw it.
Let's just piss on it, or pretend we pissed on it, and then take a picture, and that was great. Yeah,
brilliant.
It's rock and roll, right? And it's again not pretentious. It's not like there's no message in the cover. It's just good fun.
I think we're there. I mean, I'm going through my notes, and I mean, lyrically, we've already said, haven't we? It's just about the youth and just engaging and being yourself. Let's finish off with some accolades. Rolling Stone have it as 28th in their 500 greatest albums of all time. Pitchfork 100 albums of the 70s put it at number 15. In 2007, it was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is always a massive feat. Colin Larkin, who's a renowned music journalist, contemporary music journalist, has put Who's Next 48th out of 1,000 in Colin Larkin's 1,000 albums of all time. I just don't think you'll ever hear a bad word said about Who's Next.
No,
and everyone considers it their best album. You know, the Who's best album, don't they?
Yeah, right. If I'm wrong, but I think that's the only album that they had that went number one.
I actually haven't checked.
Yeah,
I'll check
I
now.
found that information.
Oh, you know? Oh, right, cool. Then yeah,
Yeah, it was the only #1 album they ever had, and
really probably
well deserved.
Yeah,
It's a
elevated
well
them.
deserved #1 in the charts for sure.
Yeah. Do you have a monologue?
I don't have a
No,
monologue. I just
shall I
say
do
The Who is
mine?
fucking great. Does
There
that
you
count as a
go.
monologue? They
That's more of a statement, I think. But yeah,
they are, well, it's the shortest monologue in
there you
history.
go.
The Who is fucking great. I've said
Brilliant.
it. Listen to it. Enjoy. It's pure rock and roll.
It is, yeah. Cool. Right, I'll do my monologue and then we can finish, yeah?
Right.
Right. I am, let's see, first two words and I fucked it up. I was a Who skeptic. I'd never heard anything that has made me understand why they belong up there with the Beatles, the Stones, the Kinks, as one of those pioneering pop and rock bands of the 60s. From what I'd heard, I'd never extracted the same quality level that I had from the other bands, and so I always looked down on them for being included in that conversation. So despite me choosing this album, I was hesitant and not really looking forward to listening to it. But how wrong I was. The dynamic feel to each song swings back and forth between styles and overall genres and takes you on a wonderful musical journey. The long songs don't feel too long and the short songs leave you wanting more. Despite the different dynamic levels of each song, Keith Moon is constantly pounding away, really cementing that hard rock feel. Entwistle's bass playing is at times ferocious and at others sweet and melodically complementary. He departs from the usual root note comfortability and started to stray more into making the bass as important and substantial as the guitar. Pete Townshend's signature riffs and power chords are on display and really give a unique identity to the guitar playing and the band, and they're completely complemented by Roger Daltrey's vocals, mixing up histrionic screams and soft, delicate passages. With each band member bringing a unique element of musicality to this album, and with them being 5 albums in, it's no wonder that the album is so varied yet works so well. I came away from the album feeling like I'd heard many elements from different bands, the compositional nuances of the Beach Boys, the innovation of the Beatles, the simplicity of the Kinks, the attitude of the Stones, and the acoustic melodic nature of Zeppelin. Yet with each song sounding unique and different, there was still a cohesion between them that really makes this album shine, and an undoubted label of hard rock that sits within each song. I think the important distinction in the Beatles versus Stones versus Who debate, not that it needs to be had, is probably the fact that when we talk about the legacy of the Beatles and the Stones, we often talk about what they did for popular music. Whilst my takeaway from this is that the Who shouldn't be in the conversation about who did what for pop, but what they did for hard rock. Predating Zeppelin and Deep Purple by a few years, yet seemingly doing as much for it as the Beatles and Stones did for pop. I think it's also important to add how much of a visionary Pete Townshend was with where he initially wanted Who's Next to go and what he wanted it to be. His vision and ambition initially seemed to fall short, but ultimately resulted in one of the greatest and most renowned rock albums of all time. It's a great album and one I wasn't looking forward to doing, but yet have come out of it probably the most satisfied from any episode we've ever done, in terms of the fact that my opinion has done a complete 180 and I'm now better off for it. I now understand why this is considered to be their best work and one of the best albums of all time. It completely deserves those accolades and, in my opinion, is a hard rock masterpiece.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better, man.
Thank you.
That's what it is.
But I needed to say it all. Like I'm happy to come on and say I didn't give the Who credit they deserve. And do you know what makes this even better? I've only heard one album. I've got all the others to do now. So.
No, you got, man. There's so much. There's so much. And check the live performances as well.
I've heard Live at Leeds is a good one.
Yeah, really, really good. Everything they do is great.
Cool. Excellent. We'll leave it there then. So thank you guys for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. As we usually say, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on one of the podcast platforms, just scroll down our show. Give us a review, let us know what you think, and just stay in touch because, you know, if you're going to follow us, you're going to stay up to date with all the episodes that we do. And any little interactions from you guys gets us seen by more people, so we'd really appreciate it. But thank you for joining us again.
Yeah, thanks for being with us one more time, and keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
Thank you for joining us, and as usual, take care and long live rock and roll.